Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. The Young and the Restless spoilers for the week of July 7th to 11th suggest that there will be knife attack mayhem in Nice, while wedding bells are set to ring again in Genoa City. Some schemers will also play with fire, so there will be a lot of action on the CBS serial. First, Victor Newman will decide to use a takedown plot to demonstrate Kane Ashby's lack of usefulness as an adversary. That's why Victor would insist on staying instead of attempting to leave the mountain straight away. Adam Newman won't stay in France because he has more essential things to do back home. Victor will rely on Adam to analyze Kane's conduct and try to have a better understanding of his entire purpose. Audra Charles will increase her efforts to bring Kyle Abbott closer. However, if Audra goes too far, her scheme may prove to be too successful. Kyle and Audra are both playing with fire, and YNR fans will be waiting to see if they succumb to the hot temptation. If Audra goes too far in Betrayal, her deal with Victor may be jeopardized. Audra may struggle to accomplish what is necessary for Vibrante while also maintaining her romance with Nate Hastings. Meanwhile, Claire Newman will turn to Holden Novak for consolation while Kyle is in Nice. Will Claire end up kissing Holden during their bonding session, or will they keep it platonic for now? Mariah Copeland and Tessa Porter will dispute over the secrets Mariah has kept about her work trip. Tessa will bring up the potential of divorce since she does not feel like she is moving forward. On a more positive note, Danny Romalotti will enchant Christine Blair with a romantic night that culminates in a marriage proposal. Christina will have to decide whether she is willing to say yes to Danny's wedding bells proposal, and there is a high possibility she will. After Chelsea Lawson sues Victoria Newman over Cole Howard's death, she will meet with Adam to exchange information. Adam will receive information on Cole's unfortunate outcome, so he should eventually offer Victoria his sorrow. Chelsea will also learn the latest news from Nice, so Adam will confirm Kane is Aristotle Dumas. Now that Kane is planning some daring Genoa City moves, Adam and Chelsea intend to fight back as a covert partnership. Back with Victoria, she'll have to make a difficult decision. That could be related to Cole's funeral arrangements or whether he should be buried or cremated. Whatever the case, Victoria will struggle through the next steps as Jack Abbott issues a tough ultimatum in Nice. Billy Abbott will be on the receiving end of a clash with his brother in the next week. Jack will undoubtedly object to Billy focusing on Chancellor rather than Abbott communications. Jack made a significant investment in Billy's new venture, so he may tell Billy to focus on it or else. Other YNR spoilers suggest Sharon Newman and Nick Newman will collaborate on a unique project. Nick will be concerned that Phyllis Summers is going in over her head with Kane, so he may ask Sharon to assist him in intervening. Unfortunately, Kane will make a specific demand on Phyllis soon, maybe demonstrating her willingness to betray Nick as she promised. Kane will seethe after witnessing several close encounters between Lily Winters and Damian Kane. Kane wants Lily back for himself, therefore he will be upset about the competition. Despite Lily's focus on Damian, Kane may be haunting her nightmares, since fantasy scenarios for the exes are on the horizon. Finally, someone wearing gloves will launch a knife attack, causing mayhem in the aftermath. Will Kane face an attempt on his life as anticipated, or will someone else be eliminated by mistake? In any case, the Young and the Restless spoilers indicate that Damian may become the primary suspect due to his fingerprints being found on the weapon, so stay tuned. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets as the city buzzed with its usual rhythm, unaware of the chaos about to unfold. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, a day where love would take center stage, but fate had other plans. The air was thick with anticipation, not just for the joyous union of two souls, but for the undercurrent of tension that had been building for weeks, a silent storm waiting to break. The wedding was the event of the season, a lavish affair attended by the city's elite, a mix of old money and new power, all gathered under one roof to witness the merging of two influential families. The bride, radiant in her ivory gown, moved with grace, her smile never faltering, though those who knew her well could see the flicker of unease in her eyes. The groom, ever the picture of charm, laughed heartily with his guests, but his grip on his champagne glass was just a little too tight, his knuckles white with suppressed tension. Behind the scenes, the schemers were at work, their whispers weaving through the crowd like poison, their motives hidden behind masks of civility. The stakes were high, and the players knew it. This was no ordinary wedding, it was a battlefield disguised as a ballroom, where every smile was a weapon and every toast a calculated move. The first sign of trouble came as the guests were seated for the ceremony, a murmur rippling through the crowd as a late arrival slipped into the back row. Dressed impeccably, the stranger's presence sent a chill down the spines of those who recognized him, though none dared to acknowledge him openly. He was a ghost from the past, a man who should have been long gone, yet here he was, his sharp eyes scanning the room with predatory precision. The bride's hand trembled as she noticed him, her breath catching in her throat, but she forced herself to look away, focusing on the altar ahead. The groom, oblivious to the danger, continued his animated conversation with his best man, unaware that the carefully constructed facade of his perfect day was about to shatter. The orchestra swelled, the processional began, and for a moment, it seemed as though the tension might dissolve into the beauty of the moment. But then, as the bride reached the altar, the stranger stood, his movement deliberate, his hand slipping into his coat pocket. Chaos erupted in an instant. A scream tore through the air as the stranger lunged forward, a glint of steel flashing in the light. The knife sliced through the crowd like a bolt of lightning, its wielder moving with terrifying precision. Guests scattered, their chairs toppling over in their panic, their cries blending into a cacophony of terror. The groom reacted first, shoving the bride behind him as he faced the attacker, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. "You," he spat, his voice raw with emotion, "you were supposed to be dead." The stranger laughed, a sound devoid of warmth, his blade dripping with the blood of the first unfortunate soul who had stood in his way. "Death is a luxury I couldn't afford," he replied, his voice a venomous whisper. "Not until I settled my debts." The room was a blur of motion, security rushing forward, but the attacker was faster, his movements calculated, his targets clear. This was no random act of violence, this was revenge, years in the making, a reckoning disguised as madness. The bride, her dress stained with blood that wasn't her own, stumbled back, her mind racing. She knew this man, knew what he was capable of, and she knew why he was here. The secrets she had buried, the lies she had told, they were all coming to the surface now, and there was no stopping it. Her eyes darted to the groom, then to the side entrance, her instincts screaming at her to run. But before she could move, another figure emerged from the chaos, a woman with fire in her eyes and a gun in her hand. "Enough," she commanded, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The stranger turned, his smirk fading as he recognized her. "Ah," he said, "the schemer emerges. I wondered when you'd show your face." The woman didn't flinch, her aim steady. "This ends now," she said, her finger tightening on the trigger. But the stranger was faster, his knife finding its mark before the bullet could leave the barrel. The gunshot rang out, but it was too late, the damage was done. The room fell into stunned silence, the scent of gunpowder and blood hanging heavy in the air. The bride collapsed to her knees, her hands pressed to the groom's chest, his life seeping through her fingers. His eyes, wide with shock, met hers, and in that moment, she saw the betrayal there, the unspoken accusation. "You knew," he gasped, his voice barely audible. She wanted to deny it, to tell him she had no choice, but the words died on her lips. The schemer, now bleeding from her own wound, crawled toward them, her breath ragged. "You played with fire," she whispered to the bride, her voice filled with bitter irony. "And now we all burn." The stranger lay motionless nearby, his body broken but his mission accomplished. The wedding, once a symbol of unity, had become a massacre, a testament to the destructive power of secrets and vengeance. As sirens wailed in the distance, the survivors huddled together, their shock giving way to grief and rage. The police would arrive, the investigations would begin, but the truth would never fully come to light. Too many lies had been told, too many lives shattered. The schemers had played their game, betting on greed and ambition, but in the end, they had all lost. The bride, now a widow before she could even become a wife, stared blankly at the carnage around her, her mind numb. The knife, discarded on the floor, gleamed in the fading light, a silent witness to the mayhem it had wrought. The wedding bells, which should have rung in celebration, now echoed with the weight of tragedy, a haunting reminder of what happens when fire is played with too carelessly. And as the sun finally set, casting the city into darkness, the survivors were left to pick up the pieces, knowing that some wounds never heal, and some sins can never be forgiven. The days that followed were a blur of funerals and interrogations, the media feasting on the scandal like vultures. The bride, once a socialite beloved by all, became a pariah, her name synonymous with betrayal. The schemer, though wounded, vanished into the shadows, her fate unknown. The stranger, identified at last as a man wronged by the very families now in mourning, was buried in an unmarked grave, his story reduced to a footnote in the tragedy. But those who had been there, who had seen the madness unfold, knew the truth: this was no random act of violence. This was the culmination of years of deceit, a web of lies so intricate that its unraveling could only end in bloodshed. The wedding had been the perfect stage, the perfect cover for the final act of a drama that had been playing out in the shadows for far too long. And so, the city moved on, as cities always do, the memory of the knife attack mayhem fading into legend. But for those who had lived through it, the scars remained, a constant reminder of the day wedding bells turned into a funeral dirge, and schemers learned too late that playing with fire only leads to ashes. The bride, now a ghost of her former self, wandered the empty halls of her mansion, the echoes of laughter and screams haunting her every step. She had wanted power, had wanted security, but in the end, she had lost everything. The groom, the man who had loved her despite her secrets, was gone, and with him any chance of redemption. The knife, the wedding, the schemers, it was all a twisted game, and she had played her part to perfection. But as she stood alone in the silence, she realized the bitter truth: in the end, the only one she had truly betrayed was herself. The story of that day became a cautionary tale, whispered in hushed tones behind closed doors. A tale of love and betrayal, of vengeance and folly, a reminder that no secret stays buried forever, and no scheme goes unpunished. The knife attack mayhem was more than just a moment of violence, it was the inevitable conclusion of a story written in greed and blood. And though the wedding bells had long since fallen silent, their echo lingered, a mournful sound in the wind, a warning to all who would dare to play with fire.